Hi, and welcome to Connecting with Kathleen. This is a show that highlights local nonprofits, bringing you information of services that are available to you in the Roaring Fork Valley. And today my guests are Zack Bowerbock, Director, and Curtis Hogan, Director at Hospitality Matters. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so whoever wants to start, I'd like to ask you, what is Hospitality Matters? Let's talk about the history and what's going to be happening very soon here for us.
Go for it, Zach.
Go, Zack.
Well, I would say Hospitality Matters is a mental health support group that is specifically designed for anybody that works in, frankly, customer service. We started our focus off mainly with restaurant individuals, front of house, back of house, whether it be a server, a cook, anybody. But we've realized that our focus is a lot broader than just the hospitality or the restaurant industry. It's the hospitality industry as a whole. And especially up here in Aspen, a lot of people have horror stories, to say the least, of customer interactions, but also have had hard times with their mental health in this town. Isolation has always been a problem with Aspen, and frankly, since COVID hit, a lot of these stress points, whether it be housing or cost of living or just being able to sustain oneself, has become much, much harder. So Hospitality Matters is here to give the workers of Aspen a resource to be able to find help, whether it be for finding therapy or helping with substance abuse. We have a lot of other fields that we do cover as well, but we really try to help out those that are going through times of need.
Excellent. Do you want to talk to the history when we started and how it got going?
Yeah, so the group officially was formed in 2019, and it formed after there was sadly a string of suicides, and it was a very devastating year. It seemed that everybody in town knew at least one person, but often two or three that had died within that 1 year period. And I do remember sitting at the end of the shift, just very upset, hoping that we could find any way of maybe preventing the next suicide, the next death. And at the same time, while trying to prevent that, what can we do for the people that are here, that are going through this loss? And so it was the community coming together to realize that we are not alone in feeling these feelings that we had, and that there was a way to change this stigma.
Okay. Do you want to continue some, Curtis?
Yeah, I mean, just about the group, it kind of starting with my history with it, pre-COVID, 2019, moved to the Valley and was invited by other local bartenders and started showing up to the meeting. Was told about it, didn't want to show up, and then came and then just kept coming to the meetings, and then we lost it during COVID. But thankfully to, Pat and Quinn, you and Zach and everybody that started it, we brought it back. And it's not always about mental health. It's a huge part of it, I feel like. And it's just nice to be in a room with people that you're like, oh yeah, like if you're just talking and sharing a story, and I think that's like, as a bartender in Aspen, a lot of what you do is talk with service industry people that study bar. And if you can have that social aspect, and you can also hear, like, human beings love to know that they're not the only one. So if you're like, oh, my lease, I'm worried about it, or I missed the deadline for APCHA, or I'm struggling with APCHA, or my landlord this, whatever it is, if you're sitting in a room full of people that are all experiencing it, it's just socializing, community support. And then when we started back up, when all three of us were kind of talking, and the other members as well, that's when I was like, one thing I think we could do more is give information, because information, if you give people the tools, they can help themselves out, and then that helps you deal, once you confront it, deal with it, you can fix it or move on past it. So that's why we brought in the EMS service, that's why we brought in Aspen Police Department to talk about, everything safety. That's why we brought in A Way Out, and we've talked about Narcan, everything like that. So not only is it the mental health side,
It's also educational.
it's education, it's tools to help you deal with it, and then really just want to get that social aspect to it too.
I can remember coming to the first couple of groups, and I'm not in hospitality, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I found my family. Like the faces, we start with warm hugs, and we talk about what's happening in your life or with your children, or oh my God, I missed my insurance payment, for medicine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it felt like we're all just one big family, and I want to put that out there for people who are watching, that you don't have to be a bartender like the two of you are. How do you say it? Sommelier. You can be from a completely different industry, because I still serve people, and come in and just find that comfort zone. I think it's really important to talk about that.
Well, we've had hairdressers come to the meeting, recently we've talked about inviting the RAFTA employees, because at one point I worked for a mountain town and drove bus and heavy equipment, and that can be just as stressful as having difficult customers sit down at your table or your bar. And
Right.
I think opening it up to other people is another great way to increase the community beyond service industry. Service industry is tight. That is a huge part of this valley. So opening it up to other people is something that, we really want to
Hotels,
encourage.
hospital.
Yeah, especially hotel and restaurant. That's
Yeah.
It was really surprising when I was going in for my last physical therapy to have someone at the hospital say, we read the article that we saw, we really do support you, and I can't tell you how much we really need this service. And to have this woman that is just the greeter at the front of the hospital, almost in tears because of the abuse that she's already gone through this winter. We're in January, and it is absolutely heartbreaking, but it's also very validating for what we are doing. And we're getting the recognition that we're doing some good work.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think another focus, like Curtis kind of alluded to, is the problem solving.
Yeah.
Right? And I know recently there was somebody who was looking for medical insurance, and somebody else, Zach, happened to have a good contact. And it's amazing how this kind of a village, right? It takes a village, and we all have different things we bring to the group and share about that.
And that coordination in the community is one of the benefits of a small town, is that I might not know somebody, but another member of the board might. And, great resource. We know all these different people. And then there's also just like, I know a guy. There's the little networking, I know a guy sort of situation. So that is one of the things that the group can bring to somebody who just shows up. You can show up for fun, show up for a guided meditation. You can show up for, an instructor, someone giving an instructive speech on what to do here and then. And also it's something that if you're not comfortable coming to a meeting, like I wasn't at first, I was like, I get enough socialization on my own. I can talk to enough people, but if you're not comfortable, I have plenty of people that just reach out to me individually for help. And they're like, I have a friend who needs this, whether it's help going to drying out and starting rehab, whatever it is, or just down to like, hey man, I'm lonely.
Right. And I think that's the other thing that group has done that we didn't know was going to happen, is that, like you guys who come, you have learned how to maybe better interact with people who have mental health issues. We've talked about, suicide prevention. How do we talk to people? And so when you come to the group, you're also getting education to help you. I always call bartenders the midnight therapist. And I think your skills has really improved since we've been working so tightly together. And that's a great skill. I would love to have that as an in-service training for the industry, for hospitality.
Absolutely. And I think back to when we first started up, there was one of the meetings, and we were talking about some of the warning signs of possible suicide or the intent. And if it weren't for that meeting, I wouldn't have known about some warning signs that I was seeing. But I do remember seeing those signs and reaching out to a friend in need. And turns out it was the right call to make. It's a resource that you've really been able to help us with, and I can't tell you how grateful I am to have that kind of education now. And we're not going to catch them all, but we might catch a few. And having that opportunity is something that I can't tell you how grateful I am to learn that.
Yeah, and I mean, the same thing for me, experiencing, it's always interesting as you grow and you get older, and the more that we would talk about things and be around mental health and talk about how to deal with things, all the things that you noticed before. You're sitting around, it's closed, everyone's having their shifties, and someone was speaking a certain way during service, and then they leave, and then everyone is just kind of like blasé about it, and then you can be like, hey guys, none of that was cool. We need to support. I know that they might have not helped you out in your section as much, but like, support that person, because we heard some warning signs, and not that you want to like, not even if you need to say it to those people, but just kind of stepping up in a way to be like, hey, let's support them instead of talking about them when they leave. And then you can reach out to them individually, you know, or I say you, but I mean, you know, me. And it's just been interesting how much I have changed how I've dealt with certain situations in the service industry based on this group.
Yeah, and that kind of speaks to some of the things we talk about is changing the culture in the restaurant, the bar, wherever you're at, from negativity. How do you support each other, especially when we're in season, which we're just getting through, because it's easy, you're tired, you're exhausted, people can get very negative, and you know, you kind of spoke to pulling people up, being kind.
And not all being rainbows and butterflies and everything, but just being realistic with people. And it's also something that there are so many younger people that are up here, and you hear the same thing every season, and they're lined up 3 jobs, and you're just kind of like, hey, in January, I'm going to watch you get sick. I'm going to watch you fall out, maybe lose one of those jobs. I'm going to be working with you, and you're going to have problems with overscheduling, and you need to, you know, and you're just running yourself down. Just coming around and hanging out at Hospitality Matters, having, whether it's a guided meditation with you or just hearing, you know,
Everybody,
your
other
coworkers.
people are having that,
yeah,
right?
your
You're not alone.
coworkers, experienced people that have been in the industry longer than you that can say, maybe you shouldn't take that 3rd job. I know it gets you benefits or some sort of like, you know, bro deal, but it's not worth running yourself into the ground. And especially with our health insurance situation in the service industry, not a lot of us have it. We have to get it individually, or people are in gaps, people get hurt, you know, then they can't work. And I mean, that personally happened to me. I was out of work for 8 months. And, you know, it's one of those things to where if I've navigated it and we're all sitting around and we're talking and we're just having a social event, or you come to one of the meetings and then you end up coming and sitting down at my bar, and then you ask me something that you didn't want to share with the group or people, then I can help you and talk to you about my experience. Or you can, you know, like with your open sessions or putting people in touch with the right therapist and counselor, they can be guided through some of the harder parts of living in a mountain town.
Exactly. So let's talk about the business cards we have.
Absolutely. So all of us on the board have these business cards, and I got to give a shout out to one of our attendees for really coming up with this idea, having a card with our information on the front. So if anybody needs to contact us immediately, we are on hand. But on the back of our cards, we have 3 key resources that are available. So we have the Aspen Hope Center.
So if you're in crisis.
Exactly. So it has an emergency line as well as a phone number for setting up therapy if it's non-crisis. But there is that crisis line already on the cards ready to go. We also do have the information for Aspen Hope Center. So that is for...
That's crisis.
Oh,
What was the first
my
one you
apologies. No, I think I did say Aspen
Yeah,
Hope
Hope
Center.
Center, yeah.
My apologies.
It's okay.
The second one is the Way Out, I believe, and that is for substance abuse. So if you or somebody else you know is going through a hard time, and it's any substance, so
Right.
it does not matter on, you know, what the context is behind that, they are available to help. And that is actually a statewide program too, which is incredible. And then finally, we also do highlight the Aspen HQ, or headquarters in particular. There's an incredible resource center that their website has so many links for services locally or in the area.
Right. They do mainly prevention. They have the provider network, and they host the mental health fund, which is a place if you get a therapist who's willing to accept that, you can get 10 almost free therapy sessions. $50, if you can't afford it, even you can get a free one. We also have on there Mind Springs, which is our local county mental health services for therapy if you need vets. But it's nice, and if anybody watching wants those cards, our number should be at the end of this show. Call us, we'll get those cards to you. We're trying to get them distributed to all the restaurants, hotels, and now hospital, I guess, so people have those resources right at their fingertips.
I think I screwed up. Maybe it's just Mind Springs and not Hope Center.
Yep.
The cards
They're
are too
both
new.
there.
I don't know
Oh,
which
they
they're
are.
back exactly.
There's 4 on there.
I know.
Oh, it is 4. Yeah. Oh, man, I thought I just had the 3 on there.
It's okay. It's okay. We're human. We just,
Amen to that.
yeah. So I was thinking about early on when we started, and there were so many suicides, and people were so devastated. And one of our initial goals really was just, can we prevent suicide? Not even thinking about, we're going to get connected and how this is going to support each other. But I remember 3 specific incidents where we intervened and prevented a potential suicide, which I'm just so proud of the group for doing that. People, like you said, they saw the signs, they kind of noticed, knowing that the police department or sheriff's department do well-person checks. They're not going to arrest you, they're going to come help you.
Learning about wellness checks and having Aspen PD sit in there and tell us the things that they told us about, we don't care. We're there for the wellness. Like, we're there to check on the person. Like, people are afraid to do it because there might be illicit substances around, but if you're really worried about your friend and you see those signs, and then just hearing that from one of our, local law enforcement, and how genuine it felt.
Right.
And, it's like, we were all like, there's a body cam, and he was like, okay, turn it off, take it off, and he just made us all feel comfortable. And just that single interaction wasn't necessarily a tool or mental health or anything. It was just like, oh, a little bit more understanding of my community and being able to not be afraid that you're going to get your friend in trouble because of a wellness check.
Right. So many people I can't call him because my friend will be mad at me. Well, you can call anonymously. You don't have to give your name. And to know that they're not going to get in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Help me think of some things that we've talked about. One thing I remember is, I think it was one of the first years when we're going into season and people were really stressed and like, I can't believe my customer did this or they said that. So one of the suggestions was get like a journal that on the top would be stuff my customer said, so you can write it down and read it more in a humorous tone. Like, can you believe this man wanted a steak and we don't have steak and he demanded it anyway? Or, you probably have some worse ones than that. But I think that brought, for some of the restaurants in town, a sense of humor. They did it at White House Tavern when my daughter was a bartender there. And she said people couldn't wait for the end of shift to go read this stuff and just laugh good-naturedly,
Yeah. And also, like I said, it's just hanging out and hearing little tools. And something one time a manager said to me, and I was just complaining, and I was looking at my tip percentage one night and on particularly one table, and I just was like, and just complaining. And the manager was like, it's all right, man, the house always wins. Averages go up. And just little tools about being around fellow service industry workers, and then you're like, oh, I can use that. And whether it's a little journal that you write everything down that you read humorously, or you hear just a little phrase that clicks with you next time you have something like that happen. So,
and we've talked too to remember that a lot of the customers we don't know their story. They might have done their entire life savings to get here. Their plane's delayed. It's super snowy. They don't want to ski in a snowstorm. I hear that a lot. It snows here. But to understand that they have a story and to not personalize. I don't know if you have any examples recently that you guys have experienced.
I mean, I got to say, we understand that things happen to everybody. We really do. But there's never any excuse for taking any sort of hardship out on anybody else. And that's always been a hard part. The holidays, we try our absolute very best, and pressure is the highest over special occasions, without a doubt. We do anything and everything we can. But sometimes a little person called Murphy likes to show his head and truly rule the night. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen just a cascade effect of, okay, a water pitcher broke, all of a sudden a table just collapsed and someone just fell through their chair. I got to say, this is pretty remarkable any other time of the year, but to have this happen on Christmas Eve is pretty exceptional.
Right.
We do what we can, and when it comes down to it, we'll do anything we can to make the customer interaction and the customer experience as best as we possibly can. Often it may not feel like it may be enough, but just to have a little bit of human compassion can really go so much further. And I feel like that's something that's really missing in a lot of situations when it's so much easier to de-escalate than trying to ramp things up.
Yeah. Restaurants and managers aren't magic, but there are things that they can do. It's interesting, we had the article in the paper about Hospitality Matters, and there were some letters to the editor. And they were basically focused on, good job, Hospitality Matters, but why aren't we talking to those customers that are so rude? And after that, I was talking with a local bartender, and he said, Kathleen, I kind of take offense to that because I feel like at least where I work, our managers stand up for us. If someone's kind of out of control or getting angry, they do try to de-escalate it. And we'll often say, this is my waiter, he's a human being, and you can't talk to him that way, which I thought was really encouraging. So I've talked to a couple other restaurants since that article came out. I'm hearing the same thing, that a lot of the wait staff, bartenders are feeling like the managers are actually standing up for themselves and encouraging their workers to stand up for themselves in a polite way. I don't know if you guys are, I think we talked about that the other day.
I think for me, it's just like to reset the mind. You see somebody's having a bad day, or they are like, can you believe this? Can you believe that? Whether it's your server standing in the well or it's a customer sitting across the bar for me. And they're just like, oh, well, that's horrible. And I just say, you know what? If that's the worst thing that happens to me today, I'm living a pretty good life. And you can kind of say, if that's the worst thing that happens to us, and that's kind of how I reframe that, instead of saying like, you need to treat me like a person, I just kind of say, hey, like we're all okay, ultimately.
And I do want to say that we're not saying that every customer that comes to Aspen is going to be.
You seek genuine connection with people. That's the only reason that I'm in it.
Absolutely.
Some people are in it for the money. Some people are here they just like to help people out.
But likewise,
there's a lot of good ones out there, and if you focus on those ones, like you have a good table. And it doesn't help if the tip's great. I mean, it doesn't hurt if the tip's great, but if you have like a really good interaction with people, you're like, you know what, they were just really nice, and it was just like, okay, start focusing on that stuff. And I know that sounds like too so be positive.
But that's a good point, because I think you could probably go and sit at any bar in town, and those bartenders are amazing. They want to engage with you. They want to talk to you, and then you end up talking to people next to you. I know you guys want to pour your drinks, but every place I've been, everybody's been so engaging. Yeah. And we should talk about the majority are good customers that come in, not just the bad ones.
Well, I do also want to, before I move on to that point, also highlight that there are also management teams that are exceptional and really leading the way as to how to really behave themselves. There are also just bad examples of both sides, of the customers, of management. You can even include, sometimes on the working side, you have some people that kind of are provocateurs, and these things happen. But we're not trying to target everything and just say that this is a broad problem that's happening. These are still issues that are happening for a lot of workers up here, and there are so many restaurants in town that all have very different management as well as ownership. And everyone's staff is also going to be very unique. So everyone has a different approach, whether it comes to their service, their employees, just their business model.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that, we're not trying to say that everyone is going through X or Y. These are individual cases, and we're trying to collect everyone as a whole. The good, the bad, the ugly. Favorite Clint Eastwood movie. Had to reference that.
Awesome, yeah. So in ending to talk about, we typically meet first and third Tuesdays at Hooch at noon. But we have something exciting coming next week.
That's right.
What?
So just to kind of, Historically, the meetings were at that time on Tuesdays at noon, thinking about people going in before their shift, but as a way to kind of flex, adapt. We're going to do no instruction, no guided meditation. I work at Stranahan's, and we're going to go ahead and set aside, the bar closes at 10, and then the back room is just going to be Hospitality Matters. We're going to provide some charcuterie boards, and you don't have to come and drink. If you want to drink, I'll get you a drink, but it's just going to be like, if you're done with your service at 10, or if you've done a little bit after, I know that's not everybody in town, but it's just another way, and it's a social gathering. It's just come hang out, and we just wanted to open this. Yeah,
right?
Make the connections, and we just wanted to open the space to people, to where it's like you don't have to worry about, it's when we go to Hooch, it is closed. You don't have to worry about
other
customers.
people.
And then we're going to have the back room, come hang out, introduce yourself, and and it's my space. I'm comfortable there, and so anything you want to ask me, talk about, come back and see me when we're not in that space, whatever it is.
So it affords to the privacy. And one thing we didn't talk about is that we all kind of take an oath of confidentiality. That's what's said in that group stays in that group, so that if you want to unload some emotional burden, you can feel safe about that. And I want to really emphasize that safety part for everybody. And the Surgeon General said the number one epidemic is loneliness. And here's another way that we can try to combat that at hours that are maybe more feasible for people who work afternoon, evenings.
Yeah, if you get out, get your checkout done, you get out done with your second turn, come join us, hang out.
Awesome.
Even, I don't care if there's 5 people or 50 people, we'll figure it out. Just show up and have a good time.
Yeah. So 10 o'clock on January 21st.
Tuesday night, yep.
Tuesday night. The Stranahan's Whiskey Lodge right off of the Walking Mall. It's going to be a wonderful gathering. So we hope to see many other peers in town come and realize they're not alone.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing that we're starting to do is when we bring in nonprofits or other services in the Valley, if you can't make that specific meeting where we schedule that, we are going to videotape that. And when we get a web page, anybody want to fund that, we will be posting those videos on their webpage. They're also will be posted on social media, and then any restaurant or hotel that wants to use it for an in-service. I did one on suicide prevention, and I know the Molly used that, so that's available to anybody who wants to do that.
Yeah, and our the Instagram thing, Hospitality Matters, and it's our logo is a tray with 2 hearts on it, so that's us, and that's Zach's always got information up on that, and there is information about the next meeting on there as well.
Right. Yeah, so feel free to contact us. And thank you for joining us today. And I'll end by saying I wish you health, healing, and happiness.